G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christopher. If you're stopping by for the first time, welcome. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and it's my first time ever trying it. It is to explore an art subscription box. This one here, it is from ARTSNACKS. And if you're unfamiliar with the art subscription services, they will, if you sign up for them, send every month a few art supplies directly to your door. In the case of ARTSNACKS, I think it's around $24 a month with free shipping in the US. But this isn't a sponsored video, so I'll just leave the link down below and you can check it out yourself and maybe look around for some discount codes or look at their other plans and options that they have. Anyway, I am excited to unbox this and to create something with whatever is inside of it. So let's go on an art adventure. Okay, so let's start with a time-lapse unboxing so that you won't be here forever. And you can see that some of the products are wrapped in tissue, some is in a plastic bag. I've got a little watercolor sampler and a Laffy Taffy snack, which was exciting because I've never tried them before, and the ARTSNACKS sticker. So this is one of the main products. It's the Graphix ink. I got a color I would never buy before, which is a lime green fluorescent yellow kind of mix called Reseda. And now for the parcel. Really cool to see a nice brush. It's a 2 flat emerald and a Copic Drawing Pen. I have one in sepia, but this is in black. And a Molotow acrylic twin paint marker, and I got True Blue. So here is a little ARTSNACKS description of all of those things, and it will go into details, including how much they can be retailed for and what's unique about those products. So starting with the Marabu Graphix Aqua ink, they say it's $3.99 retail, and you can get various inks. In this box I got Reseda, which is a kind of fluorescent greenish yellow, really bright, something that I wouldn't normally buy or try, but that's the point of art subscription box. And next is the Molotow 1-for-all acrylic trim marker. I got the True Blue, and they say it's $10.25 retail, which I found expensive, and I was curious and checked on Amazon, and I could see it for about $7.50 on Amazon, so maybe that seems a little overpriced. Next is the Copic Drawing Pen F02, and they say it's $5.95 retail, which also surprised me, but it seems to be that price on Amazon. I guess I was surprised because I moved from Japan where they're a little bit cheaper. Those are more expensive than the multi-liners, and I have to say that I actually just prefer Copic's multi-liner range. I find that the fountain pen nib is a little bit tricky to use. It could be because I'm left-handed though. Okay, turning over, there is a Museum Emerald Artist brush by Weber. They say it's $5.99 to $10.49 retail range, depending on the brush type. And I received a flat number 2, and I think maybe you can get different ones for those as well. The flat was a welcome addition to my brush set, but if I'm only using it, which I am for this piece that I'll create, it's going to be pretty challenging for me. I typically will stick to round brushes, except if I'm doing a large wash area, and then I'll use a flat. Anyway, there's the samples of those products on watercolor paper or on the little extra bonus pad of watercolor paper. But thanks to the magic of movie editing, I will now show you that process. So starting with the Molotow 1-for-all acrylic trim marker, the paint came down really easily. Just needed to shake it and pump the tips a few times, and those instructions are on the marker itself. And I found that both the nibs work really well. They're both bullet nibs. One is a large bullet nib of 4mm, and the other is a small bullet nib of 1.5mm. So you can see the difference in the writing there, or my terrible handwriting there. And then next we've got the Copic drawing pen and testing out the writing for it. It worked okay. Again, I just find it tough being left-handed maybe, or their nibs maybe a little bit tough. Especially I've compared that to some other fountain pens, which I find will write much easier. Something like the Lamy pens, but of course they cost lots more, right, than this pen. And then finally I've testing out the Reseda drawing ink, and it comes across pretty well on video that it's a very bright ink, but in real life it's really quite fluorescent and packs a punch. And of course I'm trying that with the No. 2 flat emerald Museum Emerald Artist brush by Weber, and it's working really well, that brush. The brush feels really great quality. They have little indentations for your fingers to rest in, although if you saw how I was painting, I don't use them that much. But you could also see that the Copic drawing pen ink smeared. And when I went back and read the information about the Copic drawing pen, it does make it clear that that is not waterproof ink. It's Copic marker proof, that's why it's a Copic pen, so you can use it fine with alcohol markers, and I've done that before, but you can't use water media on it. And so that made it difficult for me to decide what to do next, because I didn't have a pencil, and if I drew with the Copic drawing pen anything, it was all going to bleed everywhere when I placed down the ink. So I had to think of something that I could draw just using those supplies, and by using the acrylic twin marker, I was able to start to map something out, but of course I wasn't able to make mistakes. So I decided to firstly make a bookmark, because the sampler paper by Grumbacher, is it? Yeah, Grumbacher watercolor paper sample. It's 140 pounds, 300 GSM. That paper came in a long, narrow, rectangular strip, you can see there, that immediately made me think of bookmarks, or at least that's the best use that I could think of it. And so I drew a little decorative border with the acrylic True Blue marker, and then I had to think about what was something that I could draw well without making too many mistakes. And I'd been drawing lots of beetles lately for another project that I'm filming, and I'll show you when it's completed. And I can usually draw a little insect without making mistakes, or too many mistakes, so I decided to go for that. Originally, I was just going to draw 3 beetles, but after I drew a beetle on each end, I decided it might be better to have some words in the middle. And so I just put books, because it's a bookmark. That seemed a little bit too lonely, or there was still some space available, so I just played around and added a few little extra things, including a little bit more of typography using the thin nib, and so it now says books and bugs. And then of course I was able to then try out the watercolor, well, it's not watercolor ink, it's Aqua ink, it's called the Marabu Graphix Aqua ink. And so they describe the inks as being ultra brilliant pigmented watercolor inks. I'm not sure how it can be a watercolor if it's an ink, but that's what they say. And it's transparent and highly light fast. The description continues to say, even after drying, the ink can be completely dissolved with water, making the creative possibilities endless. The bright hues can be mixed together, so you can pick up some more colors in the ARTSNACKS shop and get experimenting. But of course, I'm sure they want me to go and buy all of them. And so I'm just going to be using the supplies that came in the box. And again, you can see that ink is really vibrant. I think because I was curious and I checked on the website, they have something like 14 main inks. So now that that little sampler image was done, I decided to make a bigger piece, but there was no way I was going to make a larger artwork without making lots of mistakes if I didn't have a pencil. So I broke the rules and I used a pencil and some sketch paper to draw out, as you can see, a little octopus there with its tentacles wrapped around a vacuum cleaner, vacuuming along the ocean. Even though the vacuum cleaner isn't plugged in, you can see the cord dangling off one of the tentacles. So you might be wondering why I've chosen to do that. I definitely didn't want to choose a human-like character because of the colors that I had, particularly that fluorescent ink. And I'd already drawn some insects, which is my go-to. So I was thinking of what else was out there that I could draw. And I'd been doing some house chores earlier that day, including the vacuuming. So vacuuming was in my mind, and I don't know, I'd just been meaning to draw an octopus for a while. So I just put the two together. And I thought with limited colors and bright colors, it could work well. Many octopodes, octopuses, octopi, whatever you want to say. Many of them can change colors or come in brilliant colors. So I was hopeful that it might work out. You also saw the way that I can sometimes transfer an image there by using just tracing paper and drawing on the back of the tracing paper with graphite and then going over the top of it. And I then used an eraser to rub out many of the lines, but I decided that I wanted the lines a little bit more visible for when I'm going to be painting with the ink, because I wasn't sure if I would get confused or mixed up as to where things would be going if I couldn't see things a little bit better. I also made a few alterations to the drawing at this stage, even though it's on the final watercolor paper. I'd always recommend drawing on scrap paper or in a sketchbook instead of expensive watercolor paper, because the more mistakes that you make, the more you damage the tooth of the watercolor paper or just the paper in general. And sometimes it's really obvious when you're painting where those errors or mistakes have been. And of course, that paper is much more expensive. Okay, so I erased the lines and then I decided to go back over them, but actually it's probably worked out for the best, because when I transfer the lines, I used a soft, something like 5B graphite pencil, and that can smear around pretty easily when you're putting down wet washes. And the new pencil that I'm going over things with is a much harder lead. I think it was a H pencil. And so that's much less likely to smear around the page. And I did find it was pretty easy to work with. So there's just lots of little tentacles and details to deal with. I also changed up the tentacle suckers a little bit. In fact, I didn't really transfer them in too much detail. I knew that I would probably want to play around a little bit with those when I was putting down the final drawing. So even if you just use that tracing paper method to get the main outside shapes, it could save you a lot of time. If you are curious about other drawing methods, I recently posted on my channel another way of transferring an image, or I guess drawing an image of something by using the grid method. So you can go explore that in my channel videos if you're curious. And I'll probably do some more tutorial videos for drawing coming up. I use a bunch of different techniques depending on, the circumstances and what's going to suit that piece the best. I think somewhere in this process as well, I messed up my new lighting new camera light, so apologies if things are a little bit difficult to see, but hopefully it's clear enough to tell what I'm doing. It just can't come together really until the end because the Copic dark black outline that I plan to use has to go on last because it's not waterproof. So there's that struggle with this kit. I don't know if it was done on purpose by ARTSNACKS to give us a real challenge, but I had to keep thinking about and planning ways to use the Copic pen last after all of the water work had been done. I was also kind of nervous about how those colors, the blue of the True Blue Molotow acrylic twin and the fluorescent greeny yellow were going to go together, and I decided to use a pipette, so hopefully not too much cheating, and some water to be able to water down the Graphix Aqua ink and to get a variation of color that way rather than just using water on the brush itself. And so I'm beginning with a lightish colored wash, or I don't know if you think that's so light there, but compared to the pure ink, it's much lighter. But really just this whole color, this Reseda color, I guess that's how you say it, is just so strong. It's so bright. I mean, like I said, it's like a fluorescent marker. So it just jumps out at you, even if it's really diluted down. And I think it was 1 drop of ink to 5 drops of water here. And so I'm just putting down a base layer coating for the whole octopus, but making it especially light on the top of the octopus's head by adding even more water for 2 reasons. 1, that's where my light source is going to be coming from. And 2, I wanted to check out what they said in the description about adding more water after it had already dried a little bit, if you can water it down more. And it seems to be the case that you can still work with this aqua ink even if it's been down for a little bit. And that's great news. I've tried using some other inks in the past, and usually they'll dry quite quickly, and it can be difficult or impossible to water it down anymore after you've placed down that wash. So in some ways, I guess it's true what the card said of it being a kind of watercolor ink, but I would still describe it as an ink rather than a watercolor. And so now I'm putting in some stronger washes. So you can see in my palette there a variation in the ink intensity. The first wash was 5 drops of water to 1 drop ink. The next one was 3 drops of water to 1 drop ink. The next one was 1 drop of water to 1 drop of ink. Then the next 2 were just pure ink. One was just 1 drop of ink, and the last one is 2 drops of pure ink. So I'm trying to get some depth, and I was still deciding if I was going to risk trying to use the acrylic twin marker for doing shadows, or at the end maybe using the Copic Drawing Pen to maybe do some cross-hatching shadows, or variation in line weight to show where the light sources are coming from. But around this stage I realized that there is a strong difference between the really concentrated ink and the watered down ink, and that would be sufficient. But I can just build up some intensity and, obviously end up with a super radioactive glowing octopus, but it's still graphic and interesting. And, who doesn't want a little radioactive octopus vacuuming the ocean floor? So I feel like around here I could see that things were sort of coming together. I even think maybe in the future this could be changed into a cute little sticker or part of a sticker set. And who knows, maybe I'll make a whole range of radioactive little creatures doing household chores and eventually create a little sticker set or zine or something from them. But for now, we've just got this first exploration, this little octopus. The vacuum cleaner is not, thankfully, the vacuum cleaner I have at home. I didn't want something so modern, so I went with kind of a 60s or 70s sort of retro vacuum cleaner with those old bags that would hang off the back of them, or at least a modification of them. I just looked at a couple of little reference images online and then created something on my own. And that's a fun thing to be exploring. I haven't done too many pieces where I'm drawing from my own imagination. I've often drawn using or heavily relying on references, and I love doing that, but it is fun to explore different art techniques and to challenge myself by drawing, without references or very minimal references. And that's part of why I've signed up for this ARTSNACKS subscription service, because I'm going to be getting a range of art supplies that I'm not familiar with probably, or I wouldn't normally choose, and I'm going to have to be creative about figuring out what to do and what I can make. So I signed up for a 6-month subscription set for that reason, and also when I looked on their website, again, this isn't sponsored, but when I looked on their website, you could get a discount if you signed up for 6 months or 12 months or something along those lines. So I think for me, it works out, I think, quite reasonably at around $19 US a month with free shipping for 6 months worth of these. And it's always exciting to get little, it's like Christmas gifts every month in the mail. Okay, so getting back to the drawing, I'm getting to a point where the ink is getting really intense, and now you can even see me just working directly from the bottle, just using pure ink. I found that a little bit clumsy, especially with the flat brush to do. So I think I end up using the pipette to bring out, to bring out more of the ink, just pure ink, and to work from my palette like that. Remember that it is ink though, so if you're going to do that, I would recommend working from some sort of palette like this one that's ceramic and easily cleaned. I found that it was super easy to wash off when I was done. So I'm getting to a point that I'm pretty happy with, even though it's glowing so brightly. There's still a kind of cool, interesting graphic quality to it, or at least I think that there is. But of course, I have to use the acrylic twin marker somewhere too, and the Copic Drawing Pen as well. But I was more nervous about the acrylic paint marker. I've used some of those before. I'm familiar with Posca pens. Again, coming from Japan, Posca pens are easy to get, and so I've got a couple of those. And I would say that they're much cheaper than the Molotow pens, and they're essentially the same thing. But the Molotow pen that I've got is a really strong blue. It's called True Blue. A deep, vibrant blue. So I had to think of where to put it and how I could add it to the illustration. And for me, the part that made the most sense to go with was the little tentacle suckers. But I also decided to experiment later by watering down the acrylic twin marker. But firstly, I'll just talk about the the process of using the pure pen. So the acrylic paint flows really easily from that. I mostly used the fine nib, and here I'm starting to use it. I think I actually only use the fine nib because of the size of the piece that I'm working on. I just found that the thick nib would have been a little bit too difficult to deal with. And the acrylic paint flowed amazingly well. It didn't ever block up or stop flowing or anything like that. And I only ever had to push down on the nib once to get that flow really going. And I think that's because I hadn't really pressed down the first time when I first activated it. I just pushed it down a little bit and then watched the ink flow down on its own. And so it just needed a little bit more nudging, I guess. So it's easy enough to apply. And I actually quite liked the combination of the suckers. It made me think of the famous little blue-ringed octopuses from Australia that are teeny tiny and extremely deadly. So if you're ever visiting Australia or you're from Australia, be wary of those little guys anytime you're at the ocean. And in general, you know, everything's out to kill you in Australia, so don't just grab random creatures because you'll probably not make it home again. But yeah, it's like a little radioactive, deadly blue-ringed octopus now. And here's where I've watered down the acrylic marker, and I've just done that by drawing onto the ceramic palette directly and then adding water. And it watered down really, I think, pretty well and was kind of like watercolor paint to paint with. And I could get some build up and variation if I wanted it to, but mostly I was just going for a light, flat, bluish color and keeping it kind of uniform, except for those octopus spots that you just saw there. I wanted those a little bit lighter, so I added more water there. And to ground the piece, I put some, I guess, kind of stony-like effects around the vacuum cleaner so that the little octopus has something to be trying to vacuum up. And then finally, I get to get this piece to come together with the outlines, something that I'm more used to doing often at the beginning of these sorts of graphic pieces, or at least, I don't know, this reminds me of working with Copic markers, and I would often ink or do the outlines before using my Copic markers, but I'm starting to get to that point of doing line work last. And in this case, I absolutely have to do the line work last because any more water after this point, and I knew that the Copic black ink was just going to smear everywhere and turn the whole thing into a brown, muddy mess. They say in the description for the Copic drawing pen, well, I'll read it out. Get the feeling of a traditional fountain pen without the inky mess. The Copic drawing pen features a stainless steel tip, perfect for inking and drawing. Achieve a variety of line width simply by changing your writing pressure. The water-based dye ink won't bleed when used with Copic markers or other markers. However, it's not waterproof. Be sure to let ink or watercolor dry completely before using this pen over it. And so the part that I wanted to talk about was where it says achieve a variety of line width simply by changing the pressure of the nib. I couldn't really see a difference when I pressed lightly and when I pressed stronger. I don't know, but maybe I'm super weak and I had to press like super strong or something along those lines. Maybe I'm also spoiled because I'm used to working with a range of different brush nib pens that will vary quite easily, and I would just recommend personally using one of those unless you're a huge fan of nibbed pens. I just think that this is really not that great, and it's expensive and difficult to use. But again, you know, it's personal preference, and it could be because I'm left-handed or I'm just used to using other sorts of art supplies. But I quickly decided when I bought the other drawing pen in sepia from Copic that they just weren't my jam, and I wasn't intending to buy any more of them, but ARTSNACKS gave me one to try. It's cool that I've got a matching set though. Anyway, I have finally gotten towards the end of my little art adventure here, so I hope that you enjoyed my ARTSNACKS unboxing and my creation of this little deadly blue-ringed radioactive octopus doing the ocean floor chores, or trying to vacuum the ocean floor. And if you would like to see another one of these next month, of course, feel free to subscribe to my channel and ring that little notification bell. Or if you're just interested in some of my watercolors and other work. And so I hopefully will see you soon for another art adventure. Thanks for watching. Bye.